Let's give it a 5 minutes, guys, to allow the people to come in. Right, so we have already about 8 people, and it is 7:05. We're expecting 15 people. Just give it another 3 minutes to see if we can allow them to join. Otherwise, we just go ahead and start the presentation.
You said 3 minutes? It's no problem.
Yeah. Julia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Right, fantastic. All right. I think it's already 7:08.
Yeah, let's get it going.
So yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Done.
Thank you, Alejandro and Yadira, to organize this nice webinar. I'm gonna turn here. We're having a heat wave here in Canada, and the AC is not strong enough, so I apologize for the fan in the background. But thank you, everyone, for joining us and taking the time as well. I'm sharing a screen that you might be able to see here. We're going to go page by page, but note that generally speaking, while I do presentations, I prefer to discuss things and have it a bit more interactive than following a script or following a deck. And we will be sharing with you all the documentation, not just the presentation, but the financial modeling and all other relevant information about Tarwa with you and Manra Capital, so that you have everything readily available to review on your own. And then typically, if you have specific one-on-one questions or personal questions and whatnot, or if you have an interest in potentially investing with us, we schedule usually a one-on-one conference call or video call to have these discussions and take next steps as needed, and we make ourselves available to do so. Before we get started, very important to know that there's always legal compliance. Most of the opportunities that we have at Manra Capital are for accredited investors, except for our mutual fund in Canada, which is also available for eligible investors. We do not do retail investors or the public at large. So generally speaking, it's people that have net worth above $1 million or make more than $150,000 in salaries a year. Generally speaking, the amounts of the investments are also, the minimum amounts are also tied to being accredited investors. So it's very important that, if you're interested, that you are a accredited investors. When we move to next steps, we do KYC, which is just know your customer to make sure that you are an accredited investor, and then all the information is filled out. That is done with usually legal and accounting department or compliance departments. And secondly, for the UAE specifically, we are currently in the process of setting up the corporations and the legal entities in the UAE and getting the appropriate licenses and whatnot, which should be done in the next 30 days or so. The opportunities that we have in the UAE are for legal compliance and signatures in August, transfer of funds late August, for it to start September 1st. So that's generally the timeline that we have for the UAE. In Canada, our timeline is active. We are registered and compliance in multiple provinces and whatnot. But in the UAE, we're still at the final, we're at the final stages of that process. All right, so just important to know that before we get started. Does anybody have any initial questions on anything I just said? It's pretty straightforward, but just in case. Perfect. If you do have a question, there's always a button just to raise your hand, right? Like I just did right now. You can just raise your hand. We'll stop. We'll unmute you. You can ask your questions. Please don't be afraid to ask questions. Questions are beneficial for everyone, and they usually make this a little bit more interesting. So feel free to ask and interrupt. So we'll start with who we are to begin. We're Manra Capital. We're a company that was started in Canada. However, our start was not as a capital management company. Our start with real estate debuted in 2015 as users. Myself and my now wife had the chance to quit our corporate jobs and launch a marketing agency in August of 2015. And we were successful enough to replace our salaries fairly quickly. And within 6 weeks, we had replaced them. And we had decided at the time to do what everybody did during COVID, which was work remotely. And we were able to travel all over the world with our dogs while managing this marketing agency. And it is what led us to where we are today. Because for 4 years, we learned how to be guests or users of platforms like Airbnb. When we returned to Canada in 2019, we had a dinner with some friends, and my best friend in high school, her husband's a CFO, and I was picking his brain about ideas of what we should invest the money that we had made with the company and save during our travels. It was costing us less to travel than to live in Toronto. And for them, his advice was to do something in short-term rental, because they had bought in 2018 a property at a ski resort town close to Montreal in Canada called Mont Tremblant for $104,000 Canadian. And the revenue that they had done in their first year with that property was $48,000 gross, and the profits were just above 30,000. So the returns on that are pretty amazing. Us being in Toronto, $104,000 is the price of a parking space in a building that you would buy a condo in. So that difference in price and value was quite substantial. So we actually went to the province of Quebec and in Mont Tremblant. That's where we bought our first property, which was we bought it in July. We took possession in October. We did the renovations, the furnishings, and whatnot. And we bought the property for $280,000. We put $60,000 in it. And in our first 12 months, which included the 3 months of COVID suspensions, we did $88,000 in revenue. Today, the property makes over $112,000 a year in revenue. And that was kind of the start to our process of investing in real estate and starting things. We took our time with it because we had the marketing agency and we had other sources of revenue. So we wanted to learn the business the way that we had learned to be guests, but from an owner standpoint, how an owner should operate. And it took us 18 months until we added our second property, which is the third door. And we used a different model. We used an arbitrage model. So an arbitrage model is, instead of buying a property, you rent the property. And you disclose to the owner of the property that you're going to do short-term rental, and you provide him with a guarantee of revenue every month. And then the upside, whatever's above that guarantee, we keep. Right. So the model allowed us to explore that model, and our investment was only $13,000 for that 2-bedroom apartment downtown Montreal. And we grossed in the first year $73,000. So, obviously the returns of 73,000 on 13,000 is pretty substantial. So at that point, we knew that we have really had something interesting and a business model that was capable of generating wealth, not just preserving it. So I'm just going to take a sidestep here and really explain a couple of concepts. The reason we do what we do and how we do it is because I did not have the blessings of coming from a family that had a lot of resources or wealth. Like, we were not poor, but I don't have a trust fund or anything like that. So our goal for me and my wife was to create wealth and not preserve it. Right. So when you're preserving wealth, sometimes your investment approach is a lot more conservative, and it's more about just generating some cash flow. For us, it was about generating some serious wealth. So we had to look at different ways to do that. So this was one of them. And the second thing that's important to understand is that in the world of short-term rentals, there's 3 main ways to generate income. One is to buy a property, operate it yourself, rent it yourself, which is what we did with our first property. The second one is to do rental arbitrage, which is renting, which what we did with the second property. And the third is to manage other people's property for a fee, which is a little bit like arbitrage in concept, but instead of a guaranteed monthly payment, it's a percentage split. Our split is 80-20. The owner gets 80%, we get 20%. It's generally speaking, it was 98% of the time, the management agreement will generate more revenue than an arbitrage agreement. But a lot of property owners rather have the fixed income just because it's less management, like they don't have to watch what's going on. They just get their money every month. They don't have to read reports. They don't have to, even if we do everything for them, they don't have to supervise it, right? And then some of them work with their own funds and whatnot, and they have specific things that they need to do. So it makes sense for them to do arbitrage. We are one of the very few companies in the world, and one of only 2 companies in Canada that do all 3 models at the same time. So I just wanted to take that sidestep to just explain the differences of explain why we do certain things at the time we do them. So the last part of that, the sidestep here is the beauty of short-term rental is that you can preview your future revenue. So when you put a property live, like this apartment in Montreal, within 10 days, we had about 60% of the calendar for the next year, right? So you're able to see your revenue 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road. You know what you're going to generate, and it allows, for good budgeting, obviously, and you know where to spend your energy on. And if your calendar is 60% booked 3 months in advance, well, the chances of hitting 85% occupancy by the time you get to that month are very high. So we like that model for this reason, is we are able to predict in the future what our revenue is, and then we adjust our expenses according to that. So when we did that with the second property, which was the third door, we had booked, as I said, 60% of our calendar within 10 to 12 days. And at that point is when we made a conscious decision to build the business plan for an execution that we would divest ourselves from our other ventures and our other businesses to focus solely on that, because it was the business that showed the most potential for wealth creation. And it took us 8 months to put everything in place to sell all our other assets, as well as it took us quite a bit of time to build the what we call our tech stack. So it took almost a year to build our tech stack, which is 12 softwares that interact with each other, that manage our business and allow us and enable us to automate everything we do, which allows us to kind of, today, if I have 100 check-in or 1,000 check-in, my systems are the same and there's no need for extra staff, right? So we had to build all that from scratch, which took us about a year. Once we were ready to do this, we sold everything, and we went from 3 doors on 2 properties in May of 2022. We finished 2022 with 7 properties. We finished 2023 with 54 properties, and we are currently at over 134 properties, which is a bit more than when we met in Abu Dhabi. Alejandro, last time we met, because we're adding properties every day now, and it's because of the system what we've built. We're now at 50 employees. We're in multiple cities. With the UAE, we're going to now be in multiple countries. We're launching in the US in the fall as well. So UAE September 1st, and we're launching in November in the US. So that's where we are. And how the capital company, Manra Capital, came to be is that when we were doing the selling of our assets and the restructure of the company and so forth, it's actually our lawyers that suggested that we do, we start talking with private money and private investors as a vehicle to help us grow. And our first structure for outside investors was called STR Fund 1, Short-Term Rental Fund 1. It was a limited partnership structured in Canada, and we raised $5 million and deployed $5 million. And It's based on, we always do preferred returns. We always have fiscal advantages for minimizing taxes and so forth. But most importantly, we always do monthly returns. So we do monthly distributions to our investors. In this one, there's two. One is the preferred distribution, which is at 10.75 per annum. So that's 896 basis points, so 0.896% per month. And then there's a profitability distribution, which is based on the performance, which averages out to about 10.06% per year. November and April, which are our two slowest months, it's a little lower. December is double. August is higher, and so forth. Last month distribution was 0.912 for profitability. So the total between both was just above 1.8% of total investments after all fees. Right. So that was our first structure with outside investor money, and the forefront of what became Manra Capital. Manra Capital was the general partner of that structure. And then we basically created Manra Capital after the fact as an operating company that manages investments. And that came when you raise funds and you deploy fund in real estate, even after you've deployed everything, other deals come to you. You get offered other deals, different types of structures, and good opportunities. And at that time, we were offered two other opportunities for which we no longer had enough money to do because we had deployed the funds that we had raised, but the opportunities were quite exceptional. So we decided through Manra Capital to open the two other opportunities via a different structure, a fractionalization structure. It's also known as tokenization and whatnot. And we closed on those two deals, and we did those two deals, one of which was a property that was listed for 1.8 million that we were able to buy for 1.275. We put $250,000 in it in renovations and furniture, and appraisal came back. We did an appraisal this week. Appraisal today. So 1 year later, the appraisal came back at $2.2 million, and the property is currently generating above $420,000 a year in revenue. Right. So that's the type of deals that we were getting. That's why we created different structures to be able to acquire those deals even after we had deployed the available funds. So now Manra Capital has a dozen asset owning entities and structures for which we're raising. We raised money and executed and deployed the money into assets that we now manage, and that Posh Properties handles the short-term rental for. And that's how we then got to the UAE. In the UAE, I personally am very bullish on the UAE. I'm very interested in the UAE. I've been for a long time. I've been going there for a few years, studying the market, making, the meetings with lawyers and accountants and consultants to kind of really get our heads around everything and all the technicalities that we need to understand before we go forward. As well as when we open a new market, not just a country, but a new city, we generally invest with our money first before we take on investor monies. And we did that in the UAE this April. We acquired some units to test out our model and to make sure that it works before we take on any investors. And so far, everything has been going great with that. But that 2-year period of learning and studying the UAE, this year we were ready. We did the purchase of assets. We bought 10 condos in April directly with our money. And then as we were doing that, we were putting the building blocks together for our first launch, which is Tarwa Fund for September. And then we will have the short-term rental fund that will launch later in the fall in the UAE. And then at the same time, we also have to open our operating company, Posh Properties, within the UAE to manage the assets on the ground. So we did the same thing. So all 4 entities are kind of being structured, and Tarwa is going to be the first one that launches. in the UAE. So before I jump into that, I always want to make sure that everyone is following along. If does anybody have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions thus far. A little bit about the history of where we got to and where we are now. Alejandro, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think some of the members joined a little bit late. So just to summarize, if I well understood, the company have successful records in US and Canada, initially with a small properties, and then eventually we're growing up with the capital funds and some investors, and now you want to replicate the model here in UAE, right? For Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Now in UAE, all right, you are setting up the complete structure to be able to proceed with the same model or deploy the same model here in UAE. And today you are overcoming the learning curve with your own capital to allow you to test the hypothesis and foreseeing any unpredictable issues and manage it in a correct way to minimize the impact on the profit. Is that correct?
That is a great understanding. It shows that this is not the first time you listen to me. Yeah, it's it is correct. It's important that's very important, right? That we're not just throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what's going to stick. We're doing things with our own funds. We're proving the concept. We're using because there's always a learning curve, no matter what. Two cities in the Abu Dhabi and Dubai are in the same country and very close to each other, but there's differences between both. So we always learn the differences of a new territory with our own money, so that if there is any kind of impact, it doesn't impact our investors, it just impacts my personal cash. But so far it's been great, and everything is going to plan. Obviously, we do, like I said, 2 years of studying it before doing it, obviously cuts down a lot of that learning curve. But it is important to do it that way, and then that's why we do it that way, and we're able to get to the ultimate result. So now we're at the point where we're introducing the products to potential investors and people that would have interest, and those that do, we keep room for them within the opportunity. And then when it goes live, we let everyone know, and then we move on to due diligence. And as I said at the beginning, the process of a regular, like any other investment, you do due diligence on us. We make sure that everything is in order for you. And then, we close. And then once we close, we deploy. And once we deploy, we distribute cash. That's pretty much.
Okay. The next part is that how you operate, right? Where are your revenue streams, or where the profit is coming? Because I think for any investor, it's important to understand. So you have three main points, right? Number one, or three main scheme. Number one is you do somehow flipping, right? You buy property,
Yeah. So
and you
yeah.
sell property, either off plans or either already made, and you either buy and sell, and you always do profit. And second revenue stream is that you buy property and you rent on short term, and in the short term, your key point is you manage to develop a system with artificial intelligence and also a little bit of arbitrage to allow you to, one, enhance the occupancy of the property.
Yeah, the
And
optimization.
optimization of the property, and based on that, and at the best rate, based on that, you maximize the profit, the ROI of the property. And the level 3 scheme is that you take property and you rent it in a long term, and you rent it out, you rent it in a short term, and you rent it out for, sorry, you rent it in a long term, and you rent it out in a short term. Or it is a back-to-back rent. You manage the property itself from a third party, right? So this
Correct.
is the third one.
And that mix is what really makes the returns, because on typically for every one property we buy, we'll rent 5. And that 5-to-1 ratio, because we buy our properties with cash, we don't take debt. The rental offsets the debt and minimizes risk. The rental is the one that has the very high cash yield, right? The multiple X, like our right now in our portfolio, the lowest performing arbitrage is 3X investment per year, and our highest one is 8.5X, right? So the arbitrage is a very big money making machine, but it has no security, right? And that's the difference. The reason we buy 1 and rent 5 is that the ones we buy them cash. That's the underlying asset security. It still has really good returns. Like our typical returns when we buy are 24%, which is amazing in cap rates and real estate most everywhere in the world. But it's not 3X, 4X, 5X as arbitrage brings. The mix is where the magic is. And the flipping of properties, we only do that in selected markets that have a lot of controls on developers. And the UAE is one of those markets, whereas the government is involved in controlling and regulating the developers. Whereas in Canada, for example, a developer can say, I will sell you this property, it'll be ready in 2 years. And 6 years later, it's still not ready, right? But you've paid for it, and then it's been years. There's no penalties, there's no fines, there's no compensation. In the UAE, there is all that, right? And it's why we do it there and we don't do it here. So we're very, very attentive as far as what we can do, what we won't do, what we will do. And all of that is based on our deal analysis structure, which we called our yes no sheet. So our yes no sheet is yes we do the deal, no we don't do the deal, and it's a pretty comprehensive analysis. And if we don't hit, like, so our minimum when we buy has to be 20%. Our minimum when we do arbitrage has to be 3X. Our minimum when we do flips is that we're able to double the money we leverage. So these analysis were very, very much disciplined in saying yes or no. There's no emotions in and picking which property we would go with. We have a question from Yagob. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening. How are you going? I just would like to comment on what you've stated just now regarding the assurance of finishing the projects, because as I know, I'm from Dubai, and I've been investing in many aspects of buying apartments, and the assurance from the government honestly is not that much, because a lot of projects has been delayed, and the maximum is you can get at the end of the project, whether it's delayed 4 or 5 years, will be 2%, no more than that, according to the regularity authority of Dubai RERA. So if I compare, if what you stated is kind of a paradox for me, because at the end of the day, you only get 2%, even after 6 or 8 years, and this happened to me. So flipping is not so viable. I see it in the market of Dubai. I don't know about Abu Dhabi because I never invested there.
Okay.
So if you can comment.
Yeah, I mean,
On that,
we
please.
know that obviously you cannot get 100% refund, and part of that discipline is also who you buy with, who you work with. There's a difference between buying with somebody that just started in the market and buying an entire floor of properties from MR, right? Like there's a big difference in who that choice and developer is. And that's a big part of our decision process. My comment as far as regulation, rules and conditions is that although not perfect and obviously still a room for improvement, the fact that the government does have structure and regulation in place, as well as escrow accounts for payments, very friendly to international investors, very friendly. They don't want people to get robbed or lose their money because it's a big part of their 2040 vision, both UAE in general, to bring a lot of investors, right? We see this as the new Constantinople. We see this as the new center of the world, the new New York, the new London, as far as where it can be in 20 years from now. And we believe that that's why they're putting in place these regulations that over time will improve even better, in order to make investors feel comfortable. It's also why we started with our own money when we bought our first 10 in the UAE, to see what the process is from our side, where we send the money, where is it held, what are, did the developer tell us A, B, and C, and then gave us X, Y, and Z? Is what we're being told and what is happening, is that being very much close to being the same, if not the same, and whatnot. And for us, so far it's been good. Obviously, I don't necessarily have had the experience that you've had doing dozens or hundreds of transactions in Dubai yet. It is our understanding and generally value in life that there's always going to be things that don't go to plan, no matter where you are in the world, based on just averages, right? If you do 100 deals, you're going to have a handful that are not, as successful or that had issues. It's how you deal with those issues and how you deal with the people. But the way we approach our systematic deal making is to minimize those chances of risk and to minimize those chances of exposure, by having rigorous discipline on who we deal with, how we deal with them, how we close deals, what conditions we put in our deals, what payment terms we put on our deals, to again minimize the chances of that happening. But generally speaking, I don't disagree with you. There is room for improvements.
Yeah, Michael. One of the things that Dubai and Abu Dhabi are implementing for the new projects are the escrow account. And we understand that, it's not 100% mitigation, because if the company goes to bankrupt because it's not performing, somehow will lead to a bankrupt, and then whatever assets the company own need to be sell to allow to pay the investor, right? But the escrow account and the supervision of the ADGM will be in place. The reason why is because we are facing here a wave in the last 10 years, fraud, not only on the real estate, we also facing fraud in other type of industries and business. So speaking on the experience of Jakub, which is he's Emirati, right? He understands well the market. He understands well the risk. He wants to make sure that, okay, somehow by the governmental, at least the company complies with the minimum governmental law. We understand that there is high risk. That's why the interest, the returns are high. But at the same time, we don't want to take a risk and lose the money, right? So that's the question.
From our side, our compliance and our supervisory systems, right? Our law firm is Simmons and Simmons, right? So it's an internationally renowned law firm. It's ranked in the top 10% of law firms in the UAE. they specialize in securities and investments. The general structure is going to be supervised by the proper authorities. We're currently not, but we would never accept any money until we are. We would not even sign contracts with people until we are. As I said at the beginning, we are at the final steps of structuring that. Obviously, by having regimented funds in Canada, it's an easy transition to the UAE because they take that into consideration and whatnot. But with having a top tier law firm and then having the jurisdictions in place so that we have the proper compliance and the proper reporting and risk mitigation from internally, those are going to be in place, and we would not just in the UAE but anywhere in the world, we would not accept money until those things are in place. From the developer standpoint, as I said, we vet the developers, we look at them, we look at their history, we look at their reputation, we look at the projects individually, and we also don't put all our eggs in one basket, right? We would not deploy all of our funds into one building without having any risk mitigation. We also keep cash reserves on hand, 35% cash reserves for any emergency funds. And then one of the reasons we're able to do the returns that we're doing is the compounding over time. After the second cycle of flips, the initial investment amount is in the reserve, right? So any kind of cataclysmic world events, recession and whatnot, we would be able to buy out investors, whereas over time, obviously you wouldn't receive the same amount of returns because there's been a buyout, but the risk of capital loss is mitigated by the cash reserves that we have in place, especially after the second cycle, because after the second cycle, the cash reserve is higher than the initial investments. So, that's kind of our risk mitigation. Please go ahead again, sir. Jacob.
Yes, thank you for explaining, and thanks, Ali, for having another question. I think in your investment, are you looking for off-plan properties, or are you looking into ready-made properties? And who are the developers who you are going to deal with within Dubai and Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, so the Tarwa itself is for off-plan properties. The UAE STR funds, which we've built but have not announced, that's going to be for ready properties that we exploit in short-term rentals, which is a little bit different, and the returns are a little lower. The off-plan plan for Tharwa, right now, the deal that we did for our 10 properties is with the developer MAAS, MAAS, who just merged. You'll have to let me email you who they merged with, but they were bought out by another big UAE developer a few weeks ago. We have a pipeline of properties for September with Emar. As you know, we're very strongly inclined to working with them, obviously, for all the obvious reasons. And one of the other ones are the developer that developed the new Atlantis, the one that looks like the boxes on top of each other. I forget his name off the top of my head, but that's the other developer. Those are the three current developers that we are working with for the deployment of Tarwa.
Okay, fantastic.
Our business development, sorry, Alejandro, just to our business development, like the people that deal with the developers on a daily basis, is Republic Real Estate out of Abu Dhabi. His name is Isvan. He's our lead as far as generating the pipeline, and then we do our due diligence after within what he brings to the table.
All right, Michael, I just wanted to interrupt you a bit because we still have 12 minutes. So
yes,
we need to speed up. So guys, is there any questions? Antoine, I think you were having a question. No? Okay, so Michael, once again, you will be under ADGM. Once you are under ADGM, you will have a escrow account and you will comply with the local regulations to allow to receive funds, right? And the contract will be signed between the investor and the company, right? There is another question here raised by Carolina. Okay, what type of company did you set here in UAE? That's number one. And number two, what about your interest in RAC? That's the two questions. If you can answer very fast, I will appreciate it.
Okay, it's just because you cut off, so I only heard the second part of each question. You said something company in the UAE, and then I heard
Yeah, what
interested in Iraq.
What type of company did you set up in UAE?
So in UAE, there's three main companies. One is Manra Capital, which is the capital management company. Underneath Manra Capital will be the blocks or series, which are different funds. So Tarwa is a series of Manra Capital, right? UAE STR1 is the same. It's a series under Manra Capital. So that's the company that will deal with compliance and regulation with the appropriate ADGM and then DIFC in Dubai and the DFSA in general for anything that has to do with compliance and regulation. And then we set up a operating company for property management, short-term rental, facility management in one in Abu Dhabi and one in Dubai.
That's good.
And then
Perfect.
the second question was Iraq. Is that what I heard? Iraq?
No. If you are interested to buy also in Ras Al Khaimah.
In Iraq.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously we're looking very closely at the casino developments. We're taking that into consideration, not just for flipping, but for long-term hold to do short-term rentals in. So I would say my knowledge is not as deep as in Dubai and Abu Dhabi today, but by the fall, we will have a lot more study done. And if we do invest with Tarwa and Rock, it would be in the second cycle, which is after 6 months. So a cycle is 6 months, just so we're aware, which is the time to acquire and sell. We put a timeline of 6 months. And the second cycle, there's some good chances that we might put a small part of our portfolio in Rock for the simple fact that, the first casino in the Middle East would be quite significant.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think if there is no more question about the company setting up, etc. So what is your value proposition? How is the fund investment opportunity it is structured?
Yeah, so the investment is a fixed income. So we pay monthly a return of the first year is 24, the second year is 30, the third year is 36. So blended, it's 30% per year paid monthly. The security is the underlying properties and the reserve fund. As I explained earlier, we have 35% of fund that we keep as reserves to be able to meet any kind of obligations or surprises or to adapt to any type of market fluctuations. And then when you buy, you're buying units of the fund, because it's a fund, it's called units, not shares. They're preferred shares. They're tied to very specific conditions. And the main conditions of that is that the monthly distribution. Every one of the investors and partners, they have access to a dashboard that shows them the portfolio in real time with all relevant documentation regarding the portfolio, which includes, deed of sales and in the cases where there are the land transfer taxes and whatnot, it's all listed and they can see the process. And when a property gets sold, all the selling documents are listed within that dashboard, which is all well organized. And that gives everyone the clarity as far as what the underlying portfolio is.
So basically what you are saying is that there is open book of all the transactions of the company to allow to understand that the company is making profit, and that's why it's paying
for that portfolio
the shareholders. Yes. Now,
so if you're an investor in Tarwa, you see everything regarding Tarwa, but you don't see anything outside of Tarwa. You only see Tarwa.
sure.
If you're in two things, you would see both.
Okay, let me ask you another question. You say that the investment is it is minimum entry fee. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you say that the investment can be for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, like a kind of bond type, and depending of the time that we choose, the fund is going to be frozen for 1 year if it's for 1 year, or 3 years in the case it's 3 years, and the return for 3 years is going to be 36 per year, or it's going to be 30, 32, and 36.
Okay, so let me be clear. So the minimum is 185,000 dirham is the minimum investment. There's no options in the years. It's 3 years. It's 36 months, fixed closed funds. So a fixed closed fund is once we reach our target of 40 million dirham, we do not take any additional money whatsoever, right? So we launch it, we raise all the money, it's closed, there's no new money coming in. That period then starts, so September 1st, 2024, the fund will end August 31st, 2027, right? That is the last day of the fund. The first year, the interest is 24%. The second year it's 30, and the third year is 36. Because for us, we make more money on the second year than the first, and we make more money on the third year than the second. So we're able to increase interest payments, or I should call them distribution payments, on the second year and the third year, all of which are split per month each month, right? So the second year you get 2% a month. The first year you get 2% a month. The second year you get 2.5% a month. The third year you get 3% a month. There's no options for shorter or longer. It's fixed 3 years. The only way for you to get out is that somebody has to take your position, because we cannot have new money come in, right? So you have to sell your position to someone else. If it's sold at discount, the other investors have a first right of refusal to buy it. They have 30 days to match any offer that you might have, but that's the only other way to exit. Other than that, it's a fixed 36 months. At the end of the 36 months, you received your initial investment back as one payment. The monthly payments are paid every month, and it is per year, not total. It's 24, so 2% each month the first year, 2.5 each month the second year, 3% each month the third year.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think we are already on time, so the team's meeting is going to end up soon. So to wrap up, guys, if you have any question, please address to me directly. All right. And thank you, Michael, for sharing the information and taking us through this new capital investment opportunities here in UAE. Feel free, any one of you, to contact me directly. And if there is any further request, we will address it directly to Michael. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions, follow-up emails, or setting up one-on-one calls with Alejandro for any and every one of you. It's not a problem.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good week. Have a lovely weekend night. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Shukran, Habibi. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
John.
Thank you, guys. Very good. Very good information.
Okay, so Alejandro, now we go to the next link.
Yeah, we go to the next one. Yeah. Thank you, Juliet.
Excellent.
Thank you for joining.